Welcome to my SPSS tutorial on independent samples t-test. The independent samples t-test compares the means of two independent groups in order to determine whether there is a statistical evidence that the associated population means are significantly different. The independent samples t-test is a type of parametric test. The independent samples t-test can only compare the means for two and only two groups. Any more, then you'll likely want to run an ANOVA. A dependent variable that is continuous. An independent variable that is categorical. Independent samples are groups. There is no relationship between the subjects in each sample. This means that subjects in the first group cannot also be in the second group, and no group can influence the other group. Violation of this assumption will yield an inaccurate p-value. Random sample of data from the population. Normal distribution of the dependent variable for each group. Non-normal population distributions, especially those that are thick-tailed or heavily skewed, considerably reduce the power of the test. Among moderate or large samples, a violation of normality can still yield accurate p-values. Homogeneity of variances. It means variances approximately equal across groups. And when this assumption is violated and the sample sizes for each group differ, the p-value is not trustworthy. Now, without further ado, how to run an independent samples t-test. In SPSS, click Analyze, Compare Means, and Independent Samples t-test. The Independent Samples t-test window opens where you will specify the variables to be used in the analysis. All the variables in your dataset appear in the list on the left side. Move the variables that are right by selecting them in the list and clicking the blue arrow buttons. Test variables, or the dependent variables. This is the continuous variable whose means will be compared between the two groups. You may run multiple t-tests simultaneously by selecting more than one test variable. The grouping variable is where the independent variable would go. The categories or groups of the independent variable will define which samples will be compared in the t-test. Let's look at defined groups a little bit closer. Click on the Define Groups button, and this window will pop up. Enter the values for the categories you wish to compare in the Group 1 and Group 2 fields. If your categories are numerically coded, you will enter the numerical codes. The Options section is where you can set your desired confidence level for the confidence interval for the mean difference and specify how SPSS should handle missing values. When finished, click OK to run independent samples t-test. So let's run an example. I've chosen fruits and vegetables as my test variables, which is going to be the dependent variable, and BMI improve with my grouping variable. Next, I'm going to click on Define Groups to define my grouping variable. And for Group 1, I'm going to place a 0 for no improvement. In Group 2, I'll place a 1 for there is improvement, and then click Continue.
Created using Powtoon.